have you been seeing the pictures I've been posting of all the food I've been making?
Oh, yeah.
The vegetarian food. I am so obsessed with vegetarian food now. It's not even funny.
Well, that's cool. That's a good thing.
We're eating so much more beans. It's not we don't smell good.
Well, it gets slightly better after your body's adjusted to it, but it's fiber.
Yeah.
It's not clogging up your intestines like meat is, so cheers to that. Yeah,
right. Anywho, Rainbows and Horror Movies. Yay!
Hello.
I'm Kayla.
I'm Paige.
And today we're gonna get to know us again. Well, me again.
Yes.
Paige for the first time.
In general. It's like a little Tom Sawyer biography time.
What's that?
The book. He basically, like, at the beginning of the book, he's like, hey, I'm Tom Sawyer. I was born in blah, 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 blah. And, like, gives his little backstory, but don't worry, ours will be more interesting, kind of.
Yeah, it's all about, like, what got us into horror.
Yeah.
And the interesting stuff about our lives.
Exactly. Like, life is more or less mundane most of the time, so you just get to hear the fun things.
Exactly. But before we get started, I counted up our countries and our states. We're in 17 countries.
Oh my gosh.
And 33 states.
That's awesome.
We're almost in all 50 states, and I'm freaking out about it.
We've almost crossed over. Does it tell you what states there
Yeah.
are? Okay.
But, 33 is a lot to list, so.
It is, but I'm curious. I'll have to get that list from you.
Yeah, I'll send you a screenshot of our map.
Okay, cool.
And then congratulations again to our giveaway winners. The packages should be sent. Well, one of them's already sent out, and you guys should be getting it. But you know who you are, and I've contacted you, and yay!
It'll be like Christmas in August.
Oh yeah,
from us, your Santa Claus.
What's it normally, like Christmas in July? They do all those like mattress sales.
Yes, so we're a little late, but meh.
The giveaway was in July, and that's what counts.
Exactly.
Oh man. Okay. So things this week. Again, cars. Yeah. You wanna do yours?
My Today I Learned?
Yes.
Sure. So last night I was at a little party, like I was telling you, and this one guy was like making fun of me hardcore because I say sure and I guess a lot of people say sure. But like I don't know. I was like, it's for sure, not for sure. And they were like but I don't know why.
Oh my god, that's like you guys making fun of me for not being able to say North Bend correctly.
Oh, because your inflection, like it's North Bend, but you say North Bend.
I still don't hear it. Anyways,
it's all good. I say sure, so
you also say, what do you say? Color?
Color?
Well, I remember when we were in high school and you said something really weird and you were like, it's because I was from New Jersey.
Right. I used to say things oddly, but the West Coast has kind of taken over my accent.
Yeah.
But sure is not one of them. So my Today I Learned. So a little bit, this also ties into the theme into about me. But, so I, house sit and pet sit professionally, I guess you can say. So I'm often at other people's houses alone, which I absolutely have no problem with. I know a lot of people do, and like when a lot of people house sit, they prefer to have friends over, but I'm just like, fuck yeah, I got a whole house to myself. But one thing that kind of intrigued me about it, and I hope this never happens when I'm present,
right.
But I was wondering, like, when do burglars actually break into houses? Like, when do they rob you? You know what I mean? Like, is it in the dead of the night when you're sleeping? Like, should you leave the light on? Should you not? Like
when you go on vacation?
When you go, well, yeah, especially when you're on vacation, but just average every day, because sometimes people are in the house when burglars happen, unfortunately. And a couple of years ago, I was living in Seattle in a big house with, I believe, like 7 other people.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So it was like the closest thing I got to living in a dorm. But, you know, most of the time, somebody was home because there were just so many people and people had their, you know, partners over and stuff like that. So there was usually always somebody in there. But one day I was actually home alone for like a couple hours and I was like, okay, this is odd. And I went to leave to go to a friend's house and, I got a call from one of my roommates saying that our house had been burglarized.
Oh, no.
Somebody broke in. They kicked down all of our bedroom doors. They stole our laptops, jewelry, you know, you name it. They stole a lot. And one of the things that really like made me laugh actually after the fact was that my mom, I don't know if your mom did this, but my mother kept all of my baby teeth.
Ooh, no, my mom did not do that.
Okay. So yeah, my mom was odd, but I had every single one of my baby teeth, and they were kept in this really pretty, like, drawstring pouch.
Did they steal it?
They fucking did, because it probably felt like jewelry inside the bag, and so they probably got the shock of their lives when they got back with all of the shit that they stole, and they opened it, and it was a bag of fucking teeth instead of a necklace or whatever. So I'm just like, karma to you. But they also stole like my makeup, which was like $500, and it was a bad time. But ever since then, I was like, when do burglars strike? Because I knew these people had been like staking out our house. They had been watching us for a while, and like some of the other girls said that they saw cars parked outside of our house just like with people watching and shit.
That's creepy.
Yeah, and after the robbery happened, people started to stake out the house again, and nobody would fucking call the cops. And I was like, I'm getting a squad car out here to like sit there all night if I have to. Like, that's what the police are for. God damn it.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, especially being home alone a lot. Like, when do they strike? And it turns out that okay, so I'll read this little blurb first and then go farther into it. So this is from like a safety website. So it says, when we think of a burglar, most of us think of a man in all black clothing sneaking into our house in the dead of night. Decades of movies have built up this image of a burglar. A man in a ski cap sneaking into your house through a window. This image, however, is not accurate. Most burglars use the front door. So lock your fucking door, y'all. Right. They use the front door. It might surprise you that most burglaries do not happen when we would expect them to. Many are in the summer during the day. So summer because a lot of people do go on vacation. So July and August are the hot spots for burglaries, basically. Like, the most happen in the months of July and August, and we are in August right now, so lock your fucking front door.
Yeah, be careful.
Most of the time, burglars do not, they don't kick down a door, you know what I mean? Like, they don't usually break windows, so.
It's the middle of summer, so people are gonna have their windows open, and their, like, screen doors open and stuff like that, so it's so much easier.
That's true. Like, yeah, and it sucks to not be able to feel like you can leave your window open, but definitely when you leave, like, just turn a fan on, close your freaking windows, lock them, because the people that got into my house got in through a window in the living room that was, like, cracked open. So, it happens. But, you know, most of the time, like in movies, you know, you see somebody coming in the dead of night, like, breaking in and shit, and it's usually not like that. They try to be a little bit more inconspicuous, if you will, and a lot of the time they will actually, like, knock on your door when you're home, saying that they're a repairman or something, and they have to look inside. So that's when they scope out your belongings, and then later, like, after they scope out your schedule and stuff, that's when they break in. And it's just so creepy, like, knowing that somebody was, like, watching us for that long, you know, and they waited for me to leave and then broke in, like, right after that. So it's just, like, crazy to me.
That's why, like, whenever someone comes to my door, it's like, it's the same thing with when someone calls me on the phone. It's like, if you really need to get in contact with me, leave a fucking voicemail or text me. Yeah. But if someone comes to the front door, I'm like, leave a note on my door and I'll get back to you later.
Exactly. Like, unless it's UPS or something, I'm not answering that goddamn door.
Exactly.
And also garage doors, guys. Those are super, super easy access. So just make sure your garage door is closed, when you're not there, especially. Never fucking leave that open. And also they do suggest, so basically, like, a well-maintained yard and things put away in your yard is a sign that people are there. A very, like, unkempt yard is a sign that your home may be vacant. So if you
or you're just lazy as fuck.
I know, right? Like, it's like, I just don't like yard work. Like, fucking sue me, right? No, but I mean, that makes sense, though, especially if you're gone on vacation and, you know, you have, like, things piling up in your mailbox or whatever. So when you do leave, just please get a house sitter, or just, like, make friends with your neighbor, you know, make sure somebody is watching your home, because that's just such a freaking easy time for people to break in. And, you know, if need be, have, like, your friend stay over and park their car in your driveway, because it'll make it look like somebody is there.
Yeah.
So 65% of burglaries occur between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. The hot times are 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So that's not during the night at all. That's actually
work hours.
That's working hours, yeah. So it's most likely when somebody is going to be gone or at work. And then, yeah, again, with your neighbors, like, I know we're kind of in a day and age where we don't really fucking know who our neighbors are, and, like, I actually don't really either, to be honest. But, you know, it
I hate my neighbors.
Oh, well, that makes sense. But you have an apartment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, apartments can also get broken into, but it's a little less likely, I feel, just because
there's so many eyes on it at all times.
Yeah.
We also have a really good security system, so that's good.
Yeah, so, but especially if a security system is also something that you can get to kind of have that layer of protection as well. But just when you leave, or just being friendly with your neighbors goes a long way. Or, like I said, getting a house sitter. So, like me. And
is that a plug for your Rover application?
Right. If you're in the Colorado Springs area, please hit me up. So yeah, most burglaries occur between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. So I thought that was really interesting, just because, yeah, like they said, when I think about a burglar, I think of, like, you know, The Strangers or something, like, you know, creepy people fucking around with you at night. Yeah, I mean, home invasion is just terrifying, but most of the time it's during the day. And so before I moved here, I was living with my mom, and she lived for a little while, and she lived in a 55 and older community, and unfortunately that is a freaking, like, poppin' zone for burglars, because
really?
Oh, absolutely. Even though it had a gate and everything, but I mean, people can get past the gate on foot, but yeah, I mean, retirement communities are really easy for people to break into. I mean, everybody's older, you know,
that's such a dick move.
Oh, it is.
I'm sorry you need drugs, but
right. Oh, I know. And not just the homes, like the mailboxes had been broken into multiple times. And the mailboxes were, like, that secure lockbox, like, you know, that the wall, the kind of, like, wall of mailboxes and apartments and stuff. But people still managed to break into them. But we got newsletters out, like, every couple weeks, every couple months, saying that, you know, Marge down the road got a knock on her door saying that, you know, somebody was there to check her refrigerator or something. Is a refrigerator running? Literally.
You better go catch it.
Yeah, and I don't, or, you know, and they would dress up in like work attire, and they'd be like, oh, hey, I'm so-and-so from the power company. I need to check your thing, you know, and these very unsuspecting older people would just let them in their house, and they would just get robbed blind.
That's so sad. That happens to people. Like, I heard so many stories about, like, when that ransom scam was going around, where, like, we have your son-in-law who you haven't seen in like 3 years. But it was a scam. They obviously didn't have him. But like a bunch of older people were falling for it and like sending them like $3,000 to $5,000, and that was like everything they had. And I was like, oh my God, that's so sad because they don't know. They didn't grow up in a time when we're like on high alert of that stuff. So
no, and yeah, it's another thing. Like they grew up in a time where you didn't need to lock your front door, you know. So
or you live in the Midwest. I mean,
right. But we had a surge of car thefts as well, like the couple years that I lived there, and 99% of the time it was just when they left their car unlocked, you know, because they're not really thinking about it, and they live in like this cute little gated community, and like, you know, they can just leave their cars unlocked. And like my mother left her car unlocked once and it got broken into. Well, you know, it didn't get broken into, they just opened the door.
Open the doors, yeah. That happened to us in California multiple times. Like, even in we had like 5 cars in the driveway, and ours was the only one that was unlocked accidentally, and they just like threw all of our paper everywhere, and they didn't even steal anything. So I'm like, fucking assholes. Exactly. You're gonna make a mess for me to clean up. Right.
God. Yeah, and actually the other day, so one of my clients who I walk their dog pretty much every day, so I'm like really close with the family now, but I got a knock on their door when I was there, and I was just like, should I answer it? And like these people I saw them out in kind of the driveway area when I pulled up, and I was like, okay, like she didn't tell me any workers were going to be here, what the crap. So I just go inside, and then they knock on the door, and I'm just like, like, you know, I'm just like, oh my God, what do you want? Like, I hate answering the door at my own home, nonetheless, like somebody else's home. And they're like, oh, hey, we're so-and-so from the glass company. We need inside to do this and that. And then I was just like, nope, like I don't live here. She didn't tell me you're going to be here, blah, blah, blah. Like, no. And they're like, well, like we're good people though, like we're a legitimate company, like here's our business card. And I was like, look, I wouldn't care if you were the Pope, like I wouldn't let you in if she didn't tell me that I should. So no. And and so I texted her about it right then and there, because they asked me to contact her. I was like, why don't you have her information? And so I did, and she's like, no, I don't know who they are, do not let them in. And I was like, okay. Yeah. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, she was like, they can make an appointment with me. And I was like, okay, thank God. Because when I was younger, like before the burglary situation happened in my own life, when I was younger, I might have let them in. You know what I mean? Because I was like, oh yeah, okay, they have a business card, they have a van, like, you know, but hell no now. And you guys shouldn't either. So, because they do pose as repairmen and then scope out your shit. So,
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's my spiel. Lock your doors and windows, and get a house sitter. So
safety tips by RAHM.
Yes. For a safer life.
Okay. So mine is, oh my God, I really want to read the whole thing, but it's like really long. So I'm just going to read the general. I'm going to. But this is about Billy Milligan. He, this is the guy who, did you watch Split?
I haven't yet. I want to though.
Oh, it's so.
I know what
it's
about though.
Yeah, so this is the guy who Split was loosely based on, very loosely, same as like The Roommate was to Single White Female. Very loose interpretation. Yeah. So Billy Milligan was an American citizen who was the subject of a highly publicized court case in Ohio in the late 1970s. After having committed several felonies, including armed robbery, he was arrested for 3 rapes on the campus. In the course of preparing his defense, psychological wow, whoa. That's a word. Psychologists diagnosed Milligan with multiple personality disorder. His lawyers pleaded insanity, claiming that 2 of his alternate personalities committed the crimes without Milligan being aware of it. He was the first person diagnosed with multiple personality disorder to raise such a defense, and in the first acquitted and the first acquitted of a major crime for this reason, instead of spending a decade in mental hospitals. So everything is really boring. I'm just going to read his personalities.
Okay.
And this is a lot still. There are 24 personalities.
Holy Jesus.
Yeah. So they're broken up into categories. So the first one is called the 10. These 10 are the alters These 10 are the alters whom personalities Reagan and Arthur decided were not undesirable. They freely shared consciousness, and doctors quickly learned of their existence. So Billy Milligan is the core personality. Mm-hmm. Arthur is an extremely sophisticated, educated Englishman. He is an expert in science and medicine with a focus on hematology.
Okay.
Arthur is one of the 2 personalities who could classify a person in the group as an undesirable. Reagan is the keeper of hate. His name comes from the words rage again. Reagan describes himself as Yugoslavian, has a Slavic accent, can write and speak in Serbian, and is extremely strong.
The heck?
I know.
So does Billy Milligan know Serbian?
No.
Or just...
It's a complete different personality.
I want to know how accurate the language is, but carry on. Are you fluent?
Are you fluent in Serbian? He controls the spot in dangerous times and can designate the group numbers as undesirable. He admitted committing robbery in order to support the family, but had no knowledge of the rapes. Alan is a con man and a manipulator. This is so interesting. He is the most common person to talk to the outside world. He plays the drums and paints portraits. Also, the only right-handed self. He is the only person that smokes cigarettes as well.
It's like, I only smoke when I drink. I only smoke when I'm this alter ego.
I only smoke when I'm Alan.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alan, for
just Alan.
Cancer.
Right.
Tommy is the escape artist. He is often confused with Alan. He plays the tenor sax and is an electronics expert. Danny is afraid of people, especially men. David is age 8 and the keeper of pain. He comes to Spot to take the pain of the others.
Oh.
Christine, age 3, was the one who would stand in the corner in school when Billy would get in trouble. She has dyslexia, but Arthur taught her how to read and write.
No.
You know, right?
Good guy, Arthur.
Christopher is Christine's brother. You'll like this one. Adelana, a lesbian, cooks and cleans the house for others, writes poetry. Milligan's attorney claimed that Adelana had admitted to committing the rapes without the knowledge of Milligan or the other alters. Never mind, you won't like her.
I think he's probably just pinning it on her, though.
Probably. I mean, there are still however many we have left, 14.
Jeez.
The undesirables. So those were just the regulars.
Okay.
These alters were no longer allowed on the spot. That means to have consciousness, and only revealed themselves after Milligan was sent to the hospital. So Phil is a thug and took part in planning some of the small-time crimes. He has a Brooklyn accent. Kevin is a criminal planner. He helped devise a plan to rob a drugstore. Walter is Australian. He calls himself a big game hunter and has an excellent sense of direction. He was labeled because he shot and killed a crow.
Oh, okay.
April only has thoughts about destroying Billy's stepfather.
Fair.
Samuel is a Jewish person, and the only one who believes in God. Was marked because he sold some of... you ever do that when you're reading something and your eyes just go like, nope, you're not looking there anymore?
Yep.
He was marked because he sold some of the other people's personal paintings. So, theft, I guess.
Yeah.
Mark of the Caves is the workhorse. He is often referred to as the zombie because he does nothing unless he is told.
Oh.
That's fucking creepy.
A little bit.
That's like the assassin of the group.
Yeah, right.
Steve is the imposter. He uses imitations for comedy. Steve never accepted that he was an MP. He was made to be undesirable because his comedy caused the family problems.
What? Okay. Thought laughter was good, but...
Yeah, I feel like Steve and Adelana should be switched. I mean, she, committed rapes.
Well,
or so they say.
Committed rapes, but she's actually gay, so...
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Well, they didn't say if... I didn't read if they said that the rapes were women or not. They could have been men. I mean, that's judgmental of us for assuming that it's only women.
I guess, but yeah. Yeah. True.
Lee is also a prankster, and his practical jokes normally get the family into trouble. He was made an undesirable because one of the jokes put them in solitary confinement. Which, ugh, yeah.
Yeah, ew.
You can talk to all your, voices in your head.
Yeah, you won't be lonely.
Jason is the pressure valve. He was used at the beginning to release tension for the family, but he caused them to get into too much trouble and was marked as an undesirable. Mm-hmm. Bobby always dreams of leading some adventure or fixing some global crisis, but has no ambitions.
Relatable. No. Valid.
Sean, who is 4 and deaf, makes buzzing sounds so he can feel the vibrations in his head. He was labeled as an undesirable because there was no benefit from being deaf later on in life. Martin is a snob from New York.
Another New Yorker.
Right?
New York.
23, Timothy worked in a florist shop until he encountered a gay man who flirted with him. He went out into his own world after that. So Timothy was just like, hey, and then left.
Dude, also relatable.
So the final one is the teacher, and that's 24. So the teacher, who was the memory trace of Milligan's sleeves, was by far the greatest milestone by helping Billy achieve fusion. He is the sum of all the 24 people put together and has almost total recall of all the other people's actions and thoughts.
Oh.
So what I'm assuming is the teacher is... No... there were too many to keep track of. So none of those were pretty much in the movie Split. There's one of the personalities that's literally a superhuman beast. So obviously, very loosely based.
Loosely, but split personality cases are just really interesting. But I haven't really heard of one with that many personalities before.
Yeah,
that's a fucking lot.
That's a lot of personalities.
He must have had some childhood trauma in that bitch.
Yeah, I mean, there was a bunch of history on him, but I thought the personalities were so fascinating.
Yeah. Have you seen the meme, they used car salesman, slaps hood? That one?
No.
Oh, well, there's one, it was slaps hood, this bad boy can fit so many blank in it. So it's slaps Billy Milligan, this bad boy can fit so many split personalities in him.
Oh,
but
man.
For real.
Milligan, you are a meme and a half.
Is he? Yeah.
You have too many personalities for one.
Right. Is he still alive?
No, he died on December 12th, 2014.
Okay, not too long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Billy. That must be hard.
Yeah. I mean, he died of cancer, but I mean... Nothing like the one. None of the personalities murdered him in his sleep, so that's good.
Oh, that's good at least. Considerate.
Entertainment. You want to do yours before I get on my high horse?
Oh God!
It's not a high horse. It's a soapbox, technically. No, what is it? It's not telling anything off.
No. I think you should go. I think you should preface it with this.
Shudder is a premium streaming service devoted exclusively to horror and thrillers.
They have thousands of hours of killer content, including Shudder originals.
They also have really awesome curated collections, so if you like demons or witches or ghosts, there's definitely a collection for you.
My favorite collections are A Woman's Touch and The Foundations of Horror.
Mine are A Comedy of Terrors and Haunted Habitations.
So go check out Shudder.com and use the code RAINBOW for your 30-day free trial.
That's Shudder.com. Use the promo code RAINBOW for your 30-day free trial.
Hey, Kayla.
Yes, Paige?
Did you know that Stephen King reads and listens to approximately 70 books per year?
Unlike me, who can barely get through one.
Well, for whatever reading level you're at, you can find the perfect book for you at Audible.
Head to audibletrial.com/RAHM to get a free audiobook and a free 30-day trial.
And if you're looking for recommendations, I suggest The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, a classic.
And I recommend Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill. Really creepy.
That's audibletrial.com/RAHM. Go get your free audiobook and free 30-day trial. Bitch. Sorry. Bitch. Edit that.
I guess getting to know us,
yes.
We're going to be talking about a lot of horror stuff. Obviously, this is a horror podcast. I didn't write anything. Surprisingly, I didn't write anything about like what I watched. It was more of a why, because during the DTK, you had mentioned that you were having a hard time soaking in all the horror or like processing it.
It's just, I feel like, for this podcast, we do have to watch quite a bit of media, and I honestly, I keep pretty busy,
Mm-hmm.
and so like the things that I watch, I don't watch a whole lot of movies and stuff outside of the podcast. So once it started just to be everything about horror,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, oh my God, like it's a lot. It's just a lot sometimes. Even though I love it, it can just be a lot. So
exactly. And so like Michaela said something very similar when we were, I don't want to say parting ways because we're still friends, but like when she left the podcast, and I had to take a step back, and I was like, am I fucked up? Can I watch horror and I like not get affected by it? And I was like, no, absolutely not. I don't watch horror 24/7. I love things like Lifetime shows and the show that I think I've talked about on this is called The Bold Type. It's about girls in the fashion industry in fucking New York. So it has nothing to do with horror. And I realized that like I'm really good at interspersing things that aren't horror. And so like I move from one extreme to the other. I'll watch things like Castle Rock and The Exorcist when it was on, but then I'll switch extremes and go to like Will and Grace and Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Bob's Burgers. Yeah. And I realized that like, so the way you feel about watching too much horror is the way that I feel about watching too much real life stuff. And like, so
like what?
Oh, so like watching things that have to do with like relationships falling apart, or there's the show that I talked about a couple times ago, Sharp Objects. It's hard because she's an alcoholic. She cuts herself. She has this rocky relationship with her mother. And so shows like that are the ones that get to me. Yeah. And that's why about balance, I can watch things like Cabin in the Woods, Urban Legend, House of Wax, Scream like 1 million times a year because they're lighthearted and they make fun of themselves. Yeah. And so when we're watching the more serious movies on the podcast, I can't watch them, like, I don't know how to explain it, like how I deal with it, because I realize the same thing. I mean, like, I watch a lot of horror for the podcast as well, and just like news and new movies that come out, I'm like, I have to watch them because this is my job now. Yeah. So like, we don't like all horror. No. You and we don't watch horror 24/7. No. I fall asleep to Kung Fu Panda. My trio of feel-good movies is Mean Girls, Clueless, and 10 Things I Hate About You. So it's like
Mean Girls for life.
Right? Yeah. I spew random quotes from that movie, and Flynn's always like, what are you talking about?
All the time. I quote Mean Girls daily almost.
Exactly. And then like I also like corny British procedurals. So like on My Favorite Murder, Karen, she talks about all the British procedurals she likes, and she recently talked about, in the episode that I just listened to, she was talking about Rosemary and Thyme. And it's about these two old women who just solve murders and garden. And it's like the stupidest thing ever, but it's amazing.
Right? I love it.
So, to round everything off,
yes.
This is a horror podcast. We talk about dark stuff, but it's really fucking important for both of us, specifically, and the listeners, to find balance. Never feel pressure when you're listening to this podcast to only love horror and dark stuff, because there's a reason why this podcast is called Rainbows and Horror Movies. Right. Is because we're trying to find the beauty of everything.
Yeah.
And yes, that usually means talking about murder and death. but
right.
But we're not trying to shame anybody for loving the morbid either. So if you're only listening to it to tune into that dark, depressing self of yours, go for it.
Go for it.
But just because I always think I'm so clever when I write my notes. Just because I know a little bit too much about the Manson family and love talking about it doesn't mean I won't also talk your ear off about Project Runway and the House Hunters. So right. it's all about balance. Watch some non-genre stuff. It'll always make you feel better. You can love horror because we fucking do. Yeah. Just balance your time. Do mental health days. If you're watching along with us, if you're watching the movies that we're going to be watching today, also go and watch The Incredibles 2 in theaters. Go balance it out and make yourself feel good at the same time. Not in a gross way. But
oh, I mean, yeah, in a gross way. But whatever you're into.
So that's my little PSA. I just want you guys to realize that when Paige says stuff like what she said last time, I'm not ignoring it. We're not gonna change the podcast at all, but we will focus on ourselves at the same time, and we will make it a responsibility to us and to you guys to be our best horror lovers while we're on the podcast.
Yeah. And I feel like in this fandom, the horror fandom, a lot of the time it's almost like an identity, you know? I've loved horror since day one, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but especially when I was a teenager, it kind of was just who is Paige? Okay, she really loves horror movies and the occult and fucked up shit, and that's how people knew me, you know? They always, whenever a new horror movie came out and somebody else was into it, they would always talk to me about it, you know? I would wear my Nightmare on Elm Street stuff all the time. I would have my room all creepy or whatever, which is great. But, as I've gotten older, I've realized that yes, it is something that I love, but it's not all of me. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of the time people in the horror fandom kind of are well, I can't really talk about liking anything else because it's going to make me seem too blank.
So when I talk about liking rom-coms and people give me shit, I'm fuck you, because that's my way out of that, and that's a little bit of both personalities of myself coming through. It's something I enjoy.
Yeah, and people are obviously very multidimensional, and while this is a horror podcast and we will talk about that, keep talking about everything we've been talking about, I guess something that I've realized recently is that I need to make time for lighter-hearted stuff, because, for instance, right now, I'm reading The Shining, and then I'm also watching horror films and the TV shows all the time and stuff like that, so I need to figure out a way to kind of just balance it. And,
well, that doesn't have to be with media either. You like going for hikes
right,
with your dogs, so do that, get your head out of the horror stuff.
Exactly. Honestly, I don't have too much that I've discovered new in entertainment over the past week, other than the fact that I started reading The Shining, and I know that it's not a new thing, but I'm really excited to read it because here, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so yeah, so I'm excited to read The Shining because everything in the movie is just gonna make a lot more sense, and like the backstory and everything, so I'm really excited about that. And also, Kayla and I really love American Horror Story, of course, and I was in love with Roanoke and all of that, but I was just like really sad when Jessica Lange left, and I'm just like, she just added so much to the show. Okay, maybe Jessica Lange can be my mom, because like she's awesome. So I was like, she's not in the new series. I don't know what I'm gonna do because they just released the promo photos for the new season Apocalypse not too long ago. And so Kayla was able to find out that Jessica Lange is indeed going to join in again on the next season. So that's going to be very fun. Because I was going to watch it anyway, of course, but knowing Jessica Lange is back on it just makes me very happy. So, yay Jessica Lange.
Yeah, Jessica Lange. I'm so fucking excited. She was my favorite thing about most of the seasons, but I think I loved her the most in Coven. I think Coven in general was just my favorite one, second to the house one. The Murder House, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they're so good. We should do an AHS show one of these days. Kind of like saying our favorite to least favorite. That'd be fun.
Yeah, well, yeah, I have a thing planned eventually for doing like our favorite episodes of TV shows, like in Buffy, if we have a favorite ones of those, and that would be really cool.
Hell yeah. Future plans.
So, do you want to tell us all about yourself?
Sure, my Tom Sawyer moment. Sure, again. So, hello, my name is Paige. So, as I've said 17,000 times, on this podcast, I was introduced to horror really, really early on in my life. And so it's just been something that I've grown up with, you know. It's just something that I've always just been drawn to and grown up with, and I've always loved it. It's not like, you know, somebody was strapping me down in front of a chair when I was 5 years old and like forcing me to watch these movies.
Clockwork Orange.
I watched Clockwork Orange when I was like 14 or something, and
oh god.
I couldn't. It took me like 3 times to get through that movie. That movie honestly upsets me. But it's a work of art. And fucking Stanley Kubrick. Like, he also directed The Shining. Like, he was a wild one. But yeah, so it's something that's been introduced to me early on in my life. It started out innocent enough. So my mom would always read me Goosebumps pretty much every day. And then when I started to be able to read myself, you know, I read them as well. And like any good 90s baby, I absorbed Goosebumps up with a sponge. And then when the show came out, that was just another level.
Yeah.
And do you remember the dog with glowing red eyes?
Yes.
The opening intro to Goosebumps TV show is just iconic.
I love
honestly.
it. Yeah.
And my grandma was a huge reader. She was reading all the time. She's a huge sci-fi and horror nerd, and you know, like I said in the Stephen King episode, loved Stephen King. She passed this all down to my mom, and my mom kind of like picked and chose. I would not call her a horror fan, but she does like certain aspects, and the movies that I watched super young were because like she was watching it, you know. So it kind of skipped a generation and hit me full force. So, and then it progressed to Are You Afraid of the Dark? Of course. Like any good 90s baby. And I remember being like 5 or 6 years old and seeing the TVY7 rating on the television show, and I went into the kitchen and asked my mom if it would be okay for me to watch it, even though I've seen it before, because I wasn't old enough, because I was like 6. And she was like, yeah, Paige, like, I don't care. Like, I had never been shooed away so fast in my life. Then at that moment, she's like, God damn, like, yeah,
you get the fuck away from me.
Show.
Go away.
Pretty much. Like, she was just like, go watch your horror films. And And then I always somehow managed to turn on the History Channel when they were talking about vampires.
Me too.
Really? And
I watched that one special they were doing for on vampires and like real life vampires and stuff like that. I was at my grandma's house, and every time I would go back over, I'd watch the History Channel hoping to see that one again.
Dude, we probably saw the same one.
Probably.
Honestly. And so with that, and then this really scary episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark that had to do with vampires in a movie theater, it actually, I had a phobia, whatever, of vampires for several years.
Really?
When I was younger, like, deathly afraid of vampires. Like, thinking one would come in my room at night and just bite my neck and it'd be over. And so, yeah, fun fact, I was afraid of vampires, deathly afraid, as a kid, and I didn't even want to be a vampire for Halloween. Like, I thought they were so scary.
Oh, no.
And then I started reading Stephen King books in about 8th grade, and in middle school is also when my obsession with Tim Burton happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, loved Tim Burton, loved everything he did. So even though it's not necessarily horror, but it's totally like a creepy kid kind of like staple to love Tim Burton. So Tim and Stephen King were my middle school dads.
Yeah.
And then going back a little bit further, which I will talk about more in the future. So I've always been drawn to the paranormal and other like strange things that my friends were afraid of. And, I guess I've just been a goth boy since I was born. But I remember when I was little, there was a playground that mostly my dad used to take me to, and there was a cemetery across the street from it. And I, like, imagine, like, a playground on one side, a street, and then a cemetery.
Oh, there's a picture like that out there.
Oh, yeah, there is. It literally was like that. And so I always wanted to, like, play in the cemetery instead. God. Yeah, which shaped my love for them as well. So another fun fact is that to this day, cemeteries are my happy places. Like, whenever I'm traveling, I love to visit historical gravesite cemeteries, and even to this day, I often take walks and ride my bike around cemeteries just because, I don't know, I just find them really serene and placid, and just
what did
me.
You just say?
I find them serene and placid.
Okay, I thought
cemeteries.
I thought you said flaccid. I was like, whoa.
Oh my god, no, freaking pervert. Yeah, so I'm one of those people. Like, I love to spend hours in the cemetery, like, reading the tombstones if I can, if they're not worn down all the way, and just like learning the history of places and the people who were buried there and stuff.
Yeah, I don't do that to that extent, but every time I drive by, I kind of like, I glance and I mentally pay my respects to the people that are laid there, you know? But
yeah.
I don't go like picnicking in the graveyard.
Oh, that's me. Like, literally. I have had picnics in the graveyard. Like, you're attacking me.
You feel attacked right now?
I do. And yeah, I love riding my bike around them because there's usually no one around. It's really safe. Like, you know, so.
Well, actually, it was opposite for me because, like, I don't know if it was just my parents and like people trying to keep me out of the graveyards, but like they told me that at night it was really unsafe to be in a graveyard just because like there's not a lot of security and people like to sleep there, and I don't know.
I guess I've done some questionable things in cemeteries. I'm just gonna say that.
Who's the pervert now?
I don't know. Don't kink shame me. But anyway, so with all that being said, I guess falling into the horror fandom came naturally to me when I was about 11 and 12, and these were like I don't want to say glory years for like horror, but that's when I really got into it like head first when like sixth grade, 6th grade. So when I was about 11 to 12 years old, roughly, my mom had this kind of semi long distance boyfriend that I've kind of mentioned before, and so she would leave me home alone every single weekend for like 2 years. And I'm an only child, so I had to find ways to entertain myself. So, and I think that kind of is like why I'm not afraid to stay home why I'm not allowed, well, why I'm not afraid to stay in houses alone. You know,
Yeah.
I just used to it. So I would ride my bike to the Safeway. If you don't have Safeways where you are, it's a grocery store. And that's where back in the day.
It's Vons. In California, they don't have Safeways. They do have Safeways, but they also have Vons. It's
Okay.
Vons.
But yeah, I guess any grocery store, like, I think they do still rent movies out. But this is back in my day. You know, there were Blockbusters, of course, but Blockbuster was kind of far from my house.
Mhm.
So the Safeway was closer. That's where I always would rent my movies. So I would ride my bike there, and I literally worked my way through the horror section like one by one over those 2 years, and Blockbuster as well when I got a little bit older and could ride my bike there. But I think I was drawn to them because of the content, because of, you know, my past and stuff, but it also was because I could watch things that my mom wouldn't approve of when she was gone. And she didn't really like censor me much. Like, I'm not a sheltered kid whatsoever, but at the same time, like, probably she wouldn't want me watching like Cabin Fever, let's just say, when she was at home. So I remember the first time I tried to rent a rated R movie, I of course like was 12, 11, something like that. And so the guy was like, this is rated R. And I was like, well, what if you call my mom and like get her permission to lift the restriction? And he was like, okay. So he called her and asked her, she's like, hey, your kid wants to rent a rated R movie. Is that okay? And she's like, yeah, it's fine. So it was just that easy. She agreed, and all the rest was history. Like, I could watch anything I wanted. So
nice.
This was the time when I discovered and fell in love with the Elm Street series in particular. A lot of the reason is because sleep, even that young and still to this day, sleep has always been a form of escapism for me. So, and I'm a very good sleeper. I've like taught myself I can lucid dream. I can do crazy shit when I'm asleep, I'll just say. And so the fact that Freddy mostly operated in dreams was really terrifying and really fascinating to me. And Freddy was also the first horror villain I had seen that was funny and who was perverted and just like all around entertaining, which I really loved.
They weren't just he wasn't just skulky or menacing. He was just like a goofy character almost.
Exactly. And well, yeah, I mean, throughout the movies, he got more and more comical, and they did do that for a reason. There's a whole like reason behind that, but like as the series progressed, like he did get more and more like funny and animated. So I thought that was really cool. And around the same time, I had watched other 80s gems like Friday the 13th, Halloween, Child's Play, all of those. And I don't know if it's because like I have an old soul or something, but I've always been drawn to, you know, that era and even earlier than that when it comes to movies. I do like modern horror, but 80s slasher movies will always have the biggest place in my heart.
Oh yeah, see, that's the same. That is the same for me with like regular films. So like when I talk about movies in general, I tend to lean towards the 80s and 90s persuasions instead of the more contemporary regular movies. So like I'll throw a lot of like quotes out from like movies from the 80s and like Ghostbusters and stuff like that. But like I don't watch a lot of movies nowadays unless they're like really goofy and actiony and stuff like that.
Right. Yep. So the good old days.
Right.
But yeah, for some reason I just like fell in love with Elm Street and stuff. And honestly, I know it kind of sounds a little bit sad, but like since my mom was gone so often, I felt like people like Freddy or, you know, Chucky, whatever, were there for me when I didn't have anyone else. And it was just another world I could escape into. And while it would be a terrifying world, I almost felt like more secure with my horror movies. Like I always knew that they were going to be there. And I felt like if I were in that universe, that maybe I would be exempt for some reason, or, you know, I felt like they would almost like protect me. I don't know. This is just like my child brain going on here. So yeah, I just felt like they were just like always there for me when I felt like really alone. And I kind of forgot this part too, but speaking of like when I was a kid and stuff, so I've always been blessed / cursed, no, blessed I should say, with like killer intuition, and like my sixth sense is already really sharp. And so before I started getting into horror, like way back, I can still do this, but like when I was really little, I could like hear and feel and occasionally see things, see spirits, entities, whatever you want to call it. When I was about 5, I was in bed one night and I remember seeing these kind of like green, kind of translucent figures kind of like floating around my door frame. And yeah, they were really tall, really thin, kind of like what you would think an alien looked like, I guess. But they were just
they were humanoid, not like orbs.
Yeah, no, they were humanoid, and they were just kind of like floating above my bed frame or my door frame. There were 3 of them, and I still believe to this day that they were benevolent beings, just like trying to protect me. And so like, you know, throughout my life, and I've been trying to find something about that online too. If any of you guys have seen floating green humanoid objects, let me know. And so throughout my life, I've had encounters with spirits, and, you know, I've been a believer since day one. Like, there has been absolutely, like, no doubt in my mind that, you know, we're not the only ones here. Like, the other side, or, like, the astral plane really isn't, like, that far away from Earth. So it's just kind of like, duh, we can communicate with spirits. Like, duh, some spirits are still like trapped here. Like, it's always been something that I've known, like I've personally believed in. So when I did discover horror and I discovered these topics were talked about on film, I was like, wow, I'm not crazy. You know what I mean? Even though sometimes I still feel crazy, I was like, wow, like, this is a thing. Like, even before I knew about it and then started watching these movies, I'm like, okay, this is real. So yeah, I guess it just all stems from my childhood. I felt really secure with my horror movies around, like I said, and one of my happiest memories, honestly, it was just like a really chill day. My dad and I were just like hanging out in his room watching The Shining. And it was just, I don't know, like, I just remember, I mean, I know, like, I don't know, a lot of people don't have, like, super great relationships with their dads, so I'm not alone.
Yeah, but rough dad club right here.
Right, and dad club for me.
Oh, no.
But yeah, like, before he died, like, I just remembered chilling with him and, like, watching The Shining and just, like, loving The Shining and, like, loving spending time with my dad and stuff. And so I have, like, a lot of really good memories tied in with horror too, and just having, like, my grandma love it so much, and I love her. So would I say my love for horror was nature versus nurture? No, I think it's a bit of both. I think it's definitely both for me. Like, it's definitely in my nature to be drawn to it, and it also was how I grew up. It wasn't something that I discovered as a teenager. It was something that I grew up with. And so talking about balance and stuff. So besides horror, I love Harry Potter. Like,
yes!
And that was another thing that I got into when I was about 11 as well. I was ass deep in the Harry Potter fandom. I still am.
That's such a thing too. Like, with horror movie buffs, they always have, like, hard roots in things like Harry Potter and, like, some of the more younger
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, like Lord of the Rings, but, like, with Harry Potter, like, it's weird to me that so many people who are into, like, hardcore horror, like fucking I don't know an example right now, but when you listen to like Shockwaves, they talk about all these like hardcore horror movies, and they're like, yeah, I love Harry Potter, I love Buffy, and it's like that's like it's like horror light.
It is, and it with Harry Potter, it was still a world I could escape to. It was a bit more positive. I mean, there were, of course, like Voldemort and like Dementors and other things that were scary and stuff like that, but I think escapism was a huge thing for me growing up, just because like I didn't feel comfortable in my actual life and I was like so unhappy, so being able to just like be, so I had this whole like this Hogwarts student character alter ego that I had, and of course Harry Potter was my boyfriend,
of course,
but like her name was Hera, so like when I wanted to just like escape and be Hera and be a Hogwarts student, I could be, when I wanted to just be an Elm Street kid and be like Nancy's friend, I could do that, you know? So it was like this whole thing for me. So besides horror and Harry Potter, I am in love with period pieces, and maybe because I'm 87, but I love shows and movies that can do period pieces really well. Mad Men and Call the Midwife are two of my favorite shows.
Which I haven't seen. My mother-in-law loves that show, so she keeps making me want, or she keeps like going like, "Have you watched it yet?" I'm like, "No, Called Midwife." Oh,
it's really, really, really good. Absolutely love it. But stuff like that. I also love shows like Queer Eye, obviously, and
I love that show so much.
I know. I followed Jonathan on Instagram like way before the show started. So when the show started and I saw him on, I was like, that's his old Instagram handle used to be Gay of Thrones.
Oh,
so
my God.
I know. So like when I saw he was going to be on the show, I'm like, oh my God, that's Jonathan, Gay of Thrones. Like, what the fuck is he doing on it? But yeah, so happy for him. Side note, he's great. But I also love like trash TLC shows.
Oh my God, yes.
Like My Strange Addiction, My 500-Pound Life. I love the BBC documentary series on like, I don't know, I just finished one on like young girls living on the street. Like, just, I love documentaries and really well put together, I guess you would call reality shows, like My Strange Addiction and stuff like that. I love it. Hoarders, yeah, all of that shit.
I learned that I would love My Favorite Murder because I was looking into both of the hosts, and Karen posted on Twitter, she was like, sometimes I feel like the cheesy potatoes woman had it right. And I was like, oh my God, yes, because that's like one of the most well-known My Strange Addictions is the cheesy potato lady, where she would not eat anything but cheesy potatoes. And I was like, yes, that is my life.
Right. It's not the worst thing you could be addicted to. But yeah, I guess I like real life kind of things. I do like some fantasy shows and stuff too, but I do find myself like watching more realistic shows, like I said, like Mad Men and Call the Midwife and Queer Eye. So
I like a lot of the new, that's why I think you'd like the dark tourism, but I really like a lot of the what am I trying to say? The documentaries / reality shows on Netflix are all really good. Like they bring a lot of BBC stuff over. So like I'm obsessed with like House Hunters and HGTV.
Oh yeah.
And so like there's a show on Netflix that is a BBC show, or it's some like PBS shit, but it's called Escape to the Country, where these people are like on a mission to find the like oldest, most unique British countryside, Wales countryside homes. And like, it's just the most quaint thing. And then fucking Great British Bake Off. Have you watched that shit?
Yes. I have.
Oh my God.
My friends, they're a married couple, Natalie and Nathan. Hey guys. But they introduced me to that show and they're like, this is what we do now. And I'm like, you guys are married, but I really love that show. Yeah, I'm like, that's cute.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with that show. I feel so happy when I watch it.
I know, they're very positive.
I'm really sad though because the hosts are changing. So like the two women who are the comedians, they're changing out for. Okay, I'm excited for one of them because the one of the hosts that's replacing him is the guy who plays the vampire on the IT Crowd, which is a British comedy show, sitcom. Yeah, the guy who plays the closet vampire, he's a comedian also, and he's going to be the new host, and I'm so excited.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. So those are the things I find myself watching when I'm not watching horror, and of course Harry Potter. Like, I went to all of the book releases, all of the movie releases. Like, hell yeah.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw the first Harry Potter movie came out when I was 10, and we were in Ocean Shores, and we went to this tiny little like hole in the wall theater that was like one of those old school classic cinema styles. Yeah. And we saw it, and I was like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Yep. I agree.
And then everyone like lost their shit when I was like, well, the third movie is my favorite. It's like, fuck everyone. It's like, it's a good movie. It's the worst one when you relate it to the books, but it's like my favorite one because it's like a coming of age. He's a teenager. Huh?
Azkaban?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone shits on me for having that be my favorite movie, and I'm like,
no, I like that one. And like Sirius Black. I mean, come on.
Right? Yeah, I love the werewolf.
Goblet of Fire.
Lupin.
Yeah,
Lupin is probably one of my favorite characters, although rest in peace.
Me too.
So,
may they rest in peace. And Hedwig and Dobby, R.I.P.
God, everybody. Now we're sad again. We see what we did.
Yeah, but it's because J.K. Rowling just didn't want to write any more books. Probably. Yeah, gotta kill half the cast.
Fucking authors.
I feel you. Right. I feel you.
Man.
Yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Getting to know Paige.
Yes.
You'll obviously get to know her more and more and more and more as we continue.
More. Yeah.
So mine's like pretty short and sweet. Sorry, cars. I did mine a while ago. I think this was one of our first like 2 or 3 episodes where we did ours with me and with Michaela.
Yeah.
So I said
like the first one.
Was it the first one?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an update. Massive update. That one was our first, like, we don't know what we're doing. This is the podcast. I think the episode was only like 28 minutes or something.
I think so. Yeah.
Good times. So, originally I said stuff like Goosebumps, Hocus Pocus, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which I listened to both. Or I read and I listened to on audio tape whenever I was in like what the fuck, like after school. I'd have to wait for my parents to get off work, and so I'd listen to it, and I'd be over in this corner listening to Scary Stories on tape, and then like these other people were like listening to like the oh my god, what the fuck is the monkeys kid, the kid who was raised by monkeys, Tarzan. They'd be listening to like the Tarzan soundtrack, and I'd be like listening to my Scary Stories.
That's a killer soundtrack. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. I'm Phil Collins.
Yeah, Phil Collins. Phil Collins has. Anyways,
yeah, Tarzan's great as well.
That's also true, but I've had more time to like really think about it. Mm-hmm. So, a throwback to you and me. Is that I remember that one of the first horror movies that I was like, have you not seen this? Was American Psycho.
Yeah.
And I remember you hadn't seen it, and I was so obsessed with him.
Yeah. Yep. We bonded over that.
That was such a good movie, and I still love it. I recently finally fucking bought it on DVD, and I really want to watch it again. It's weird, though, because that movie is... I keep looking up, like, dark comedies, and that movie falls on lists sometimes, and I'm like, it makes fun of itself, but it's really brutal.
I wouldn't necessarily call it a comedy.
No,
but okay.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if it's like extremely like Onyx Black dark comedy,
right? Just a little bit. But yeah, love American Psycho.
Right. Around the same time. as I think I met you, I was watching other like teeny bopper horror movies like The Covenant and The Craft and a lot of like 90s
Love The
teen
Craft,
based stuff. You're right.
Yeah.
But then around the time when on demand became a thing, like cable on demand.
Oh, hell yeah.
I watched Candyman alone. Like it was like
okay.
totally whim. And I remember, so a lot of people ask me, what was your first horror movie? And I like to think that one was it. Because I had seen things like Aliens and Alien and all the Alien series. I watched Predator a lot when I was younger because that was one of those, my parents had a very strange movie line. Like they were like, oh, you can't watch Queen of the Damned, but we'll let you watch Schindler's List. So
Okay.
So it was like really, really intense real life horror and then not a lot of like fakey horror. Anyways, but I became obsessed with Candyman, and plug for Scream Factory along with Trick or Treat and Urban Legend. They are coming out with a 4K Blu-ray special edition of it.
Nice.
Made to look pretty. Remastered, yeah.
Remade to look pretty.
Same thing, right?
I mean, yeah, it's the same thing.
That's funny. And then, so, alright, this one gets a little bit emotional for me, but, so last time I think I mentioned this a lot, but, like, my mom and I watch Practical Magic every year on Halloween.
Yes.
And the more I thought about it, she was actually really more of a film inspiration than I thought. Because I actually watched Practical Magic last night and I got like so teary-eyed. I'm like, this is my childhood.
Right. That's me.
But she, like, whenever I was sick, we'd stay home and we watch everything from like rom-coms to Lifetime thrillers. She really loved those female empowerment crime thrillers. So like a lot of the ones with the Ashley Judd thrillers, like Kiss the Girls and Double Jeopardy, stuff like that. She loved those crime thrillers, and that was I think out of everything bleak in the genre, I think I lean much more towards like crime horror than I do supernatural, because I just love one of my favorite movies is Untraceable. I think I've mentioned it before. It's a Diane Lane. She's an FBI tech lady. She works on like cyber crimes, and then there's this like serial killer who's killing a bunch of people, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
So that my mom, she was like, she was also like when my stepdad got super religious, she was the one who was like, all right, well, let's listen to like Devil Goes Down to Georgia in the car on the way to school. So she was very much like, fuck you. And so actually jumping around a little bit on my list, religion had a huge impact on me. And what did I say? I remember growing up and thinking all of it was bullshit, and the devil and his devious ways sounded fucking awesome.
Right? I'm like, I think they're having more fun, like, outside of church, so...
Yeah. And then I remember Buffy. So Buffy, before my stepdad got super religious, I watched Buffy before I went to middle school. And, I loved it. It was rebellious. There was witchcraft. There were demons. There was sex, like teen sex. And I was like, yes. And, and then I remember after he made us get into religion, I walked into my cousin's house and they were watching Buffy. And I literally point blank said to them, that's a sin.
Oh, God.
And they never let me forget it. Literally.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how long after that did you start watching it?
Oh, I watched it before.
Oh, okay.
So, like, it went, like, normal secular stuff to super hyper religious to extreme opposite back again to horror and porn. And this was also in a time when, I don't know if I ever told you this story, but when I was 14, my parents tried to have an exorcism on me because
God.
they caught me watching porn.
You didn't tell me that. Oh my God. I need like 15 exorcisms then.
Well, the thing that caught me was I was young and stupid. So, like, this was back when, in 2004, when internet was, like, still really kind of new. And I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. So I literally broke their computer with all the fucking malware.
Oh, hell yeah. Like, porn.com. Like, it's the thing. No, I remember, dude, like, sorry, not to segue just a little bit.
No,
so
it's fine.
My grandma, the Stephen King one, she raised my cousin, and he must have been looking at porn because I got on their computer one day, and I went to Neopets, and as I do, and all of the ads, like, all of the little, like, ad
We're
boxes
porn.
were porn. And I'm just like, oh my God. So I went on the message boards and I was like, is anybody else's like ads showing naked people? And my cousin was there and my grandma was there and my grandma and I were like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? And my cousin is just like not saying anything. So yeah, breaking computers with porn. If you haven't done it, you haven't lived.
Well, breaking computers with porn and breaking computers with fucking LimeWire and FrostWire.
Yeah, I mean that too.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's a sin, and
yeah, it's a sin.
And then I realized, like, literally less than a year later, I'm like, what the fuck was I talking about?
You were
hyper religious. But so actually going back to a little bit, not on my notes, I grew up watching things like what was it called? Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland. Do you remember that movie?
Vaguely.
Yeah. Okay, where he like gets like swept away on his bed with this flying squirrel. Yeah. And they like have to defeat a nightmare.
Yes.
I love that. I think every time I talk about it, I'm like, people, if you guys have a VHS copy of this fucking movie, please send it to me because I will love you forever because I'm looking for it so hard. And every time I see it like available as like a group package on Facebook, it's like $10,000. And I'm like, I don't want to spend that money.
Good Lord. No. But yeah, that movie.
But yeah, so that I too liked more of the strange and unusual, supernaturally weird stuff that my family didn't really understand.
Yeah.
And then in 5th and 6th grade, remember when we had to do recorders in...
I was not lucky enough to. We were in band, and well, there was a band, but we all played different things. I played piano, but I always was jealous of the fucking recorder kids.
Yeah, we just had like one big music class, and one day they taught us the Danse Macabre, and I became obsessed with it, and I love it. Like every year for Halloween, every year around Halloween time, I listen to the classical music channel, just like hoping to catch it. And like I understand that I can just like listen to it on YouTube, but like it's so much more nostalgic for me to hear it on the radio.
That's fair.
And then in 4th grade, I did a giant report on Vlad the Impaler.
Okay. Yep.
Also, you know, raccoons, but that is...
But Vlad.
Yeah, Vlad the Impaler, I learned about... When I did that, I learned about Elizabeth Bathory and a lot of the, like, old school gems.
Old school.
And then this one is my last one, but it's a little bit emotional as well. So, how old were you when you were 9, when 9/11 happened?
Yeah.
Okay. So, 9/11 had a huge impact on me. When I was 11, and that was 6th grade for me, I think. That day was just like a normal fucking day. Obviously, getting into the story, like imagine going back in time, just like young me rocking through the hallways.
Walking.
There was a girl. So this girl I fucking hated, but she pretended to be like me, so we were frenemies. But she wore a Two Towers shirt, and I said, so I'm just gonna read this word for word. All I could remember about that day, before everything happened was how fucking weird. I remember saying to myself how much I wanted to visit New York and how cool it was that she had been there or was at least wearing a t-shirt all bedazzly, like, because...
Was she wearing it the same day?
Yes.
Oh, that's weird.
That was, like, some foresight right there.
Right.
And then we got the news, and everyone was like, all right, we're gathering outside.
Oh,
I remember this day.
Oh, I can never forget.
Clearly, right? We all went outside into the, like, this little grassy area, and they were like, all right, something tragic happened, and we needed to take a moment of silence. We were all really fucking confused.
Yeah.
And then they sent us home early that day. And then, because this was like, this was history, literally history, and I sat down in front of the TV, and I remember it was playing on every fucking news station.
Yeah.
And I was just watching, like, the bodies falling from the towers.
Yeah.
And I remember going like, what is that? Is that just debris? And my mom's like, no, that's a person. And it was just so fucking surreal. And it was just one of those moments where I was like, if this shit can happen, the world is dark and we need to be able to, like, accept dark stuff. And so when we talk about, like, death and murder and even, like, the supernatural, I feel like it's less of a, I don't know how to say this correctly. I feel like it's less of a getting in touch with our dark side and more of a, like, a celebration of life, because especially with things like the supernatural, we're celebrating the fact that these people are not gone forever, even if they're, like, malevolent and demonic and stuff like that. They're still here. And it was a hard thing to watch. Like, that day will be ingrained in my memory forever. It was just so confusing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember, like, a couple of years ago, I stumbled upon a diary of mine that I kept at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the entry that I wrote on 9/11, and it was about, like, you know, just from what we were told, you know, it was planes that crashed into the buildings and terrorists, and we were under attack, and I was like, how could anybody do that? So yeah, I think anybody that was over the age of, like, 5 when that happened probably had a big impact on everyone.
Yeah, I mean, unless you were, like, because I know a lot of people were super sheltered from the footage. And a lot of people didn't actually see it until much later in life. And then, like, and then it immediately brought out the crazies. And I knew
9/11 was an insidejob.com.
I remember realizing that my stepdad had a little bit of a problem when he's like, I'm gonna write this conspiracy theory novel about the 9/11 cover-up, and I was like, wow.
Did he really?
No, he was just an alcoholic, but he's better now.
Good job, John.
Wow, you remember his name.
Yeah, I do remember his name.
That's weird.
I know.
Anywho, so let's move on to something that disturbs you.
Great. So we're talking about some movies that we watched as children, well, younger, right?
Yeah, we're younger times that, like, really fucking freaked us out. Then, in your case, it still freaks you out, and in my case, I fucking love this movie now. So, continue.
Yes. So the one I chose was The Ring,
which I watched again. Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm actually okay. So I was a little bit hesitant to watch it again.
Did you actually end up watching it?
I'm actually in the middle of it right now. Like before we started this, so I'm like halfway through, so I can kind of talk about that. But yeah. So I watched The Ring. I remember I watched it the first time at one of my infamous horror parties that I had in 5th grade and with my friends, and it was just like, yeah, it scared everybody. But a couple people had to, like, go upstairs and, like, play some games to, like, get their mind off of it. But it absolutely terrified me. It was a movie that stayed with me for years after I watched it, and I had a couple instances where I would kind of, like, scare myself so much, like, I would just be frozen. Samara, in particular, like, she was just really creepy to me. I remember one time, like, I was home alone, and I was in my bedroom. I woke up in the morning, and I don't know. I felt like I almost felt like this presence
Oh,
outside
God.
of my
Oh, no.
outside of my door, and I was terrified. I didn't want to open the door, like, because I thought maybe Samara would be there, and I thought about like calling my mom or like calling the cops or whatever. But I don't know. Like, I was just like paralyzed with fear. And I think the imagery also like was just really freaking creepy. The Ring movie, well,
Yeah.
like the video,
Yeah.
and like I said, I'm going to finish it today, but I just like, it's been years since I've watched The Ring because it literally traumatized me. But I'm watching it again, facing my fears, and yeah, oh god, the video that The Ring has, I just still whoo, like the fingernail through the fucking,
Oh, yeah. Oh, God.
the nail through the fingernail, and just the imagery, like the giant centipede and the lady just, you know, jumping off of the cliff and stuff. It really terrified me. And I think, like, I'm just realizing this now, maybe it scared me so much because when I was younger, I thought that the people on TV could actually see you.
Oh. So when she like looked into the camera, you were like,
yeah.
what the fuck?
Oh yeah. And like after the first time I watched The Ring, this was landline days, we did get a fucking phone call.
Oh no.
And I'm just like, oh hell no. So yeah, The Ring was just one for me. And yeah, I noticed that the whole movie, like the cinematography and everything, was really dark, like
really
gray,
blue. Yeah,
a lot of blue. I mean, it did take place in Washington, so now I realize why, because it's like that up there. But but I mean, I thought that was cool too, like being from Seattle, seeing that in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that kind of like also just scared me more as well.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I upon watching it again, I realized that like, so I've talked about this a lot, but I have a huge thing for 90s horror.
Uh-huh.
And I have an okay thing I have a little more of a thing for early 2000s horror that I do for contemporary horror, because like, all right, in this movie, so 90s horror was all about like doing it yourself. No technology, maybe email.
Yeah.
There weren't cell phones, there wasn't Wi-Fi, so you didn't always have a signal. And then in the 2000s, cell phones and Wi-Fi was a thing. So they really used that, like, all the time. Like, the phone calls, and then they were, like, really focusing on using their cell phones to get a hold of each other. And, like, they would, like, zoom in really close on the cell phone. And I was like, oh my god.
That's so true. Now that I think about it, yeah.
Yeah, they as soon as the internet became a thing, all of these 2000s horror movies came out, like fucking like The Ring. There's a movie called Pulse, which was a Japanese movie, but then it got remade with Kristen Bell. Remember that movie, One Missed Call?
That's the one I'm just thinking
about.
I was like, what was that one where they all had the cell phones? Yeah.
And you got so mad because they were all using Boost Mobile and you screamed at the screen.
Oh, yeah. What a plug for Boost Mobile.
But yeah, so like as soon as like the 2000s hit, all this technology horror came out and everyone had like phone horror. It was very strange. And then
yeah, it's true.
I don't know, did I say Stay Alive, the video game or video game movie?
No, but I liked that one too.
I did too. That's like such a guilty pleasure for me.
Right. Fuck it. I love it. But yeah, that's The Ring for me. I don't have too much more to say about it other than like it fucking terrified me, and I'm just now like 15 years, I don't know how old I am. Yeah, probably 15 years later, I don't know, watching it again, and it's, I do like it. I do like it now, you know, as an older person, like I'm catching more of the slight details, and it's more of like it almost was kind of like a mystery movie.
Yeah.
You know, because like the journalist was trying to figure out the hell happened, but I think when I was younger, just like the really scary imagery got me, and like something crawling out of the TV, like, oh my god.
And then, so the one
and
thing...
the fucking jaw.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
My mom actually watched this movie first, and when it came time for me to finally watch it, I was like, "Can you tell me what happens?" Because I was a fucking scaredy cat back then. and she told me that there was a scene with a horse. And
yeah. Oh,
that horse scene, I just think it was so hard to watch. I had to like watch, when I watched it yesterday, I had to like turn around. I'm like, nope, I can't handle it.
Oh.
And then like when the horse is screaming, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I hate
it's that whole
shit.
like animal thing again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh god.
But yeah, I think that too, because I am/was a horse girl, and at that age I had a horse, and like that was my life. So yeah, I think that was probably pretty traumatizing. So
yeah,
that's the Ring for me. In short, it still kind of fucking freaks me out. So
yeah, I had to watch Gremlins afterwards. Well, that's my movie, but I had to watch Gremlins afterwards to like make me feel better.
Right. I'll probably do that too. And with that, go ahead and take it away.
Gremlins. So this is like, again, getting to know us again. I've mentioned a lot of this stuff before, but Gremlins was a movie that my stepdad was like, hey, this is a cute Christmas movie. When I was 4 years old.
Okay. Gremlin, yeah.
Right now, oh yeah, I watch it every year for Christmas. It's totally going to be on our Christmas watch list. Right. But
they're so cute.
They are so fucking cute. So I remember specifically when I was 4 years old, not only did I think that the Gremlins were going to eat Santa Claus, but I really hated the scene. So after I've watched it again as an adult, there's a scene where the one that he takes to the teacher, the professor, when he turns into a gremlin and then he eats the teacher, I remember it being so much more brutal in my head. And it freaked me out. But then I watched it again as an adult. And it was just literally like him screaming with his hand underneath the desk. And then the next scene is he comes in and like, his head is underneath the table. Like, it's not scary at all. No. But, so do a general premise of The Ring. We didn't do a general premise of it.
Okay. Basically, there's a videotape that went around. It's full of really disturbing imagery, and if you watch it, you will get a phone call directly afterwards that tells you you have 7 days to live, and, yep, you die, after those 7 days, and, basically, the backstory was, I mean, like I said, I'm only halfway through, so kind of refresh my memory. So a lady and her freaking adopted daughter, her daughter was kind of like this force of evil, they were saying, made her do weird things.
Yeah. Pretty much, so, yeah. So in the backstory of so there's a woman and her son, and they watch the tape, and then in the hunt for trying to figure out what is happening, they find out about this woman who killed herself, and then come to find out that she ended up killing her daughter, and that's kind of spoilers, but it's an old fucking movie. But a bunch of weird shit. She basically thought her daughter was Satan, and basically like
she put her in a well.
She put her in a well, and that's the daughter's ghostly body created this video. Yeah, pretty much in a nutshell. And then
the first viral video. Yeah, don't watch it. I mean, don't watch the actual video and die, is what I'm saying. So
Gremlins, much more lighthearted. So this guy who's an inventor, he buys this creature for his son called a Mogwai. And there are 3 simple rules that go along with owning a Mogwai. It is, don't get them wet, don't expose them to sunlight, and the most important rule of all is do not feed them after midnight, which I understand now as an adult means don't feed them after 12 a.m. and then like feed them after 12 p.m. But at the time I was like, what does that mean? Every time's after midnight.
That's true. That's valid.
So obviously what happens first, he gets the Mogwai wet, Gremlins come out, basically. That's not at all in detail. I just don't want to give away too many spoilers because we'll probably end up talking about this movie sometime in the future.
Yeah.
And this guy now has this like horde of gremlins, these like nasty green things that like came out of this fluffy cute thing. And it's such a great movie. So I remember being terrified of this movie, but now that I've watched it again, twice as an adult, or more than that, but like in recent history, I've watched it twice. I am obsessed with the theme song.
Yeah.
The fucking like jingle, the da 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 da. It's just so amazingly nostalgic for me. And like the acting is like most 80s movies was
it's okay.
Just okay. But it was like a big movie. It was like fucking Steven Spielberg, and it was amazing. And so, like, now it's just a fun ride, and it's really funny, and it's really cute. And the fucking dog, I love the dog. Barney, I think his name is.
I think so. Aww.
But it's fun. It's a really fun movie.
Yeah. I like Gremlins.
But that was my that's my from childhood terror to adulthood nostalgia. Amazing.
Yep. Speaking of Gremlins, Harley. Hi, Harley. He has a dog named Odin, and in pictures a lot of the time we call him like, look at him and his gremlin looking ass.
Aww.
Like, 'cause sometimes he does look like a little gremlin.
Oh my god, it's so fucking cute. Did I tell you that I had a dog? My favorite dog breed is a Brussels Griffon, and they're the ones that look like little Ewoks. Mm-hmm. And they are the cutest little fucking dogs like this. So we were in a bad situation, so we couldn't keep her. But we had this little, she was like 3 years old, but every time she needed to go outside and we were asleep, she would literally jump on the bed and then like commando crawl her way up Flynn's body and then like just like tickle his face with her little tongue.
Oh.
And it was like, he hated it, but I thought it was the most cute thing ever.
Right.
Because it would be like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, sorry, but it's so cute.
Right. I forget what the gremlin's name is, for some reason.
Oh, shit.
It's like something iconic.
Yeah. I want to keep saying Mogwai.
No.
Gizmo. Yeah.
Gizmo. There's a lot of pets that I know named Gizmo.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Did you have fucking Furbies when Furby came out with a Gizmo?
Oh, dude. Oh, yeah. Right. Furbies are another tangent, but
oh my god. Have you seen the videos of them being like burned alive and laughing? Oh
my god, that's amazing, but no.
They do the same thing terrifying. With the Tickle Me Elmo. Someone lit it on fire.
That's hilarious. Oh my god. Tickles.
Yeah, oh, and it's terrifying when the face burns off.
Oh, I'm sure. Yes. That's nightmare fuel.
Oh my goodness. So that's getting to know us.
Yeah, thank you for having tea.
Or tea?
Whatever you're doing right now.
I know that Dee is at work. Hi, Dee. Dee told me that like she listens to us while she's at work and she gets really sad when we don't have any more episodes. I'm like, well, that's why we're doing 2 now.
That's super cool. Yeah. And it's cool that you're able to listen to it at work.
Right. A lot of people do. Like I remember when I was working at like a job, I couldn't get away with that shit. Listening to podcasts, what is that?
Right, me neither, but props to you guys.
Right, lucky. Speaking of a few things, do we want to explain anything, or do we just want to let people hear what we're doing without explaining?
I think without explaining.
Okay. Ignore that then.
Yeah. Don't mind that.
Don't mind us. So, are we ready for exits? Exits? I can't speak today. Exits.
We're almost done, it's fine. Exit.
So, for our, DDTKA episodes now airing weekly, submit your stories or articles, written stories, or made-up stories, or, wait, that's the same thing. Either your stories or someone else's stories, your real-life stories, or made-up stories. That's what I meant to say. Articles and other horror shit. Email us at rainbowsandhorrormovies@gmail.com. You can also submit it on our Facebook group and or our subreddit, because we only have 10 people on our subreddit right now, and I'm pretty sure that half of them are bots. So.
Fun. Yeah.
Yeah, just submit those there. We love to read your stuff. Get all of the bonus episodes and other rewards at patreon.com/RAHM podcast. Remember, we're donating 10% of our monthly total earnings to a few different charities that we feel very passionate about. You can contribute by becoming a patron, buying stuff from our shop, signing up for affiliate programs, or just straight going to donate. I mean, 2 birds with 1 stone if you're donating to us, but no pressure.
Yeah.
All the information that I just said you can find on rainbowsandhorrormovies.com. Find us on social media at RAHM Podcast. Find me on social media at BKDub. Find Paige at Floral Coffin. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe on iTunes specifically, but everywhere works. And I'm out of breath.
You said that all in one breath. Yes. Well, thank you again for listening, and it was nice to officially meet you all.
Yay!
Yay. All right, we will see you next time. Stay strange.
And unusual. Bye!